Hello friends, so this is a quick revision session as part of Prayaas Prelims Mentorship program, and we try to conduct such quick revision sessions for each of the subject, and either it will be live or recording will be provided to you. So let's start the session, and we will talk about in this video about the basic terms. When we see the paper of UPSC, they are asking basic terms, the relationship of basic terms with respect to macroeconomic aspect. Say for example, what is GDP? You have to know what is GDP to answer what is the relationship between GDP and inflation, what is the relationship between GDP and consumption, what is the relationship between GDP and investment. So if you don't have knowledge of what is GDP, it is very hard to understand what is the correlation between different macroeconomic parameters in a nation like India and the term GDP. So to score high marks in economy, it is extremely important to know the basics right and have conceptual clarity. Should not have a single or even a slightest of doubt, even a slightest of doubt in the terms which are basic in nature. If you will have slightest of doubt, you will be trapped in the questions of UPSC prelims. First of all, we will understand what is GDP. So GDP is the total value of all final goods and services produced within a country's border in a specific time period. So what does it mean? Suppose in India we are producing X amount of goods, X amount of services inside the territory of the nation, and all the goods and services that are used to compute GDP should be final in nature. What does it mean? It means that if you are producing bread, the amount of uh, atta or maida which is being used to produce the bread should not be measured while calculating the GDP, because what will happen is there will be double counting. Once you are calculating the intermediate good, again that value is added while you are calculating the final good. So it will lead to double counting. To eliminate this, we only take final goods and services. Inside the territory of India, there are many multinational companies. There are many companies uh, whose owners are not Indian. That also comes in GDP, and that's why there is a, uh net national product, which signifies the amount of money earned by Indians. Then it will also include the company owned by Indians working in another territory and earning money, and that will exclude the amount of revenue generated or income generated by a company which is not owned by India, or with the profit of which company is ultimately going to another country, but it is based inside the territory, or the production process or the services are providing within the territory of India, it will be excluded from it. Now, what are the methods to compute GDP? The first method, the basic method, is production or output method. So it simply calculates the value of goods and services produced in various sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, services. So what are the uh, value of goods and services that are produced by agriculture sector? What are the goods and services value produced by manufacturing services? We will add everything and we'll get the GDP of a nation. Another method is income method. Now in this, what we will do is we will add all types of incomes earned in the economy. In economy, basic types of income that is earned is, if you are working anywhere, you will earn the wages, you will get the salary. If you are an entrepreneur, you will get the profits. If you have some land, if you have some commodity, something, it will fetch you rents. And the another source of money or earning for government is taxes. Government earns through taxes, indirect or direct tax. that will exclude the subsidies, because again subsidies will be subtracted from it is because subsidies are not something which is providing you income. No, it is a kind of expenditure. Third is expenditure method. In expenditure method, GDP is calculated by adding up all expenditures made in economy, including consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. So that means an individual will do expenditure in terms of consumption, or she can invest as well. A company can invest, government can invest, and government can spend on different schemes, programs, subsidies. There are so many expenditures of government. Net export is what is the total amount of uh, the money that we get after subtracting export from import. You know? So if we are exporting $100 million worth of goods and services, and $70 million is our import, then $30 million will be our net exports. You have to remember one point is, irrespective of method, whether it is production, income, or expenditure, all three methods should ideally yield the same GDP figure, ensuring consistency in the measurement of the economic output. However, in real scenario, there can be slight differences between these three methods. Now, what is the current scenario of India's gross domestic product? So, India's GDP growth rate, as said by the finance ministry recently, will exceed 6.5% in the financial year 2024. That is forecast. It can breach it, it can be less than that, but it is seen as a very healthy growth rate, seeing what is the scenario of the world. World is going through a sluggish economic growth, and there are many reasons to it. Post pandemic, there were several shocks. Economies like United States of America is going through a slowdown because of the crisis, like Silicon Valley Bank crisis. In China also there is a sluggish growth which is being observed. There is different conflicts going on in terms of Russia-Ukraine war, as well as the crisis between the Israel and Hamas. So now it is also being dragged into the Mediterranean region, Red Sea, um, where Houthis are trying to target the petrol vessels. So all these are leading to a kind of world economy which is going through a sluggish growth. But India's GDP growth, which is not exactly coupled or tightly coupled with the world economy, because its growth is mainly driven by the consumptions of its people, you know, and majorly urban consumption. So it will be the key driver of our GDP growth rate. Now we will understand another important term which is known as fiscal deficit. So what is fiscal deficit? If you think that government is a kind of household which has certain budget, there will be some earning of a household. Suppose a house earns 100 rupees, and 50 rupees is expenditure of house. है ना? So in that term, house is running surplus, there is no deficit. But what if a household income is 100 rupees, but they are spending 120 rupees? That 20 rupees will be the deficit. And when we talk about nationwide, then it is known as fiscal deficit. So fiscal deficit in the Indian economy or any economy refers to the difference between what government's total expenditure is and what is it total revenue is. कि कितना the government is spending and what government is earning, है ना? Excluding money from borrowings. If you add borrowing, then it will become zero, है ना? Because if I have to pay 20 rupees to a bank, supposingly I have earning of only 100 rupees, 120 rupees I spent, I will borrow some from some bank or from friend or something else, and if I will add this into my budget, then what will happen? It will become zero. 20 120 120, it will become identical. So in terms of in the terms of macroeconomy or an economy of the country, borrowing is excluded. In simple term, what is it? It means how much government needs to borrow to meet its requirements, spending requirements. It is usually expressed in the terms of GDP, GDP ka percentage. Formula is simple: total expenditure minus total revenue, excluding borrowings. What does a high fiscal deficit means? High fiscal deficit means that government is earning less, spending more, you know, so it will lead to increased borrowing. Moderate fiscal deficit shows that economic growth and development is consistently uh, managing the earning of government. Expenditure is less, government's purse is healthy. If fiscal deficit is consistently high, if government is earning less, spending more, and that is happening at a consistent rate, that will induce many problems. One of the problem is inflation. Why inflation? What will happen is government is spending more, you know, so there will be increase in money supply, you know. Secondly, if government is spending more, and to manage that, government will borrow. When government will borrow, then what will happen is government will borrow for suppose from a bank. Now bank has 100 rupees. Now government is spending more, so they are borrowing more. The more they will borrow, the less money will be left for others to borrow, like private sector, individuals. So what will happen? Then there will be crowding out of investment. This is a term, because उनके पास now there will be less money to borrow. In this scenario, there will be increase in interest rates also. There can be increase in interest rates also. And when there is increase in interest rate, then it will have counter effect. So in economy, one factor can induce another factor can induce the third factor. Everything is correlated in economy. Even the monetary policy, fiscal policy, they are all interrelated. So managing the fiscal deficit is crucial. Now, current fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit in the financial year 2023 was 6.5% of GDP, and the projection for financial year 2024 is 5.9% of GDP in the fiscal year 2024. Now, what will be the actual figure? Will it breach or will it not breach? Usually, what happens is that government uh, many a times breach the limit. It's the usual scenario. There is another important term which is related to it. It is known as fiscal consolidation. Now, fiscal consolidation is a method or process through which government tries to reduce its fiscal deficit and bring its finances to a more sustainable and stable position. Sustainable, why? Because if you will keep on borrowing more and more, then if you are borrowing, uh, then you will take loan, it will have interest rates, you will have to pay those interest rate. So it not only disturbs the current fiscal year uh, budget, but it also have a negative impact on the future generation. That's why having a consistently high fiscal deficit is not considered sustainable and healthy for a economy. That's why in 2003 we had a law that is known as FRBM Act. Full form is Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. The FRBM Act is one of the most important legislation in India aimed at promoting fiscal discipline and sustainability for a government. Now we will read something about FRBM. Now FRBM has several components, several key features. The first is fiscal targets. The FRBM Act sets target for reducing the fiscal deficit as well as revenue deficit, aiming for a prudent fiscal policy. Now, NK Singh committee had put a target of 3% fiscal deficit of GDP. We are yet to reach that target because one of the key factors behind this lack of reaching the fiscal deficit target, was the uh, global pandemic of COVID-19. In that, our fiscal deficit reached the level of 9.2%. And because of that modality, we had to take a path uh, which was trying to save the economy, which was trying to save the people instead of thinking about fiscal consolidation. Another component of FRBM is medium term fiscal policy statement. The government is required to present a medium term fiscal policy statement outlining its strategy for fiscal management. Debt reduction, uh, central government has to emphasize on outstanding liabilities to a sustainable level. The main key feature of this FRBM Act is that it introduced a kind of transparency as well as accountability in terms of fiscal operations of government through the presentation of detailed budgets and accounts. एक तरह की ट्रांसपेरेंसी रहती है, and because of that it is healthy for an economy. Yeah, transparency and accountability is must. Otherwise, what will happen if there will not be any transparency? Government will say that we have fiscal deficit of 9%, and in actual terms it may be 12%. Transparency and accountability in governance, trust based governance, is a must for any economy which aspires to be Viksit. Revenue deficit in India is consistently decreasing because in terms of merchandise export, etc., we are earning a good amount, and government is also trying to bring down the revenue deficit. Capital, if the deficit is in capital account, it is not considered that bad because capital account में deficit is for the future of the economy. If we are spending more on building infrastructure, say for example Purvanchal Expressway or Atal Tunnel or Char Dham project or any other such infrastructure project, it will boost our economy. It will have multiplier effect. It will have a healthier impact on creating more jobs. It will have a healthier impact on reducing the logistic cost. It will further fuel the Indian economy, and that's why the revenue deficit is considered not good for an economy, but capital deficit is still fine. So this was the first video, and we will have more such video. Thank you very much. Take care.